Hey, what's up? Coach Austin here, and today I'm going to introduce you guys to the newest product from Prime Fitness, the highly anticipated Smart Arm attachment. This attachment allows for 6 exercise variations, including the leg extension, which I have set up here right now, the lying leg curl, the preacher curl, tricep extension, as well as a back extension and an ab crunch. Now, this piece is extremely high quality, what we've come to know and love from Prime, as well as including their beloved torque arm, which is very popular and most known on their plate-loaded machines, which allow for more variable resistance across the range of motion. So, without further ado, let's talk about setup, let's talk about storage, and let's answer your most commonly asked questions about this attachment. Let's get into it.
This is the Smart Arm base. The base weighs nearly 40 pounds, and we're going to use the 1-inch holes here on the 3x3 rack, put it in hole 14, as the owner's manual states. Hole 14 is approximately 35 inches from the floor. Utilizing the 2-inch centers here on the rack because the pop pin helps secure things on the attachment, as well as this torque handle that I'm screwing in. And as you're going to see, this really secures it to the rack. And I gave it quite a bit of force here just to show you how secure this attachment truly is, which is an amazing feature of this rack attachment. Next, I wanted to show how free moving this arm is to allow for really a maximum variation within your body type and structure across the 6 total exercises that you can do with this. Next is the bench locator, which is going to allow us to best align the bench with the movements that we are going to use within our training. Put on the counterweight. Next is going to be the torque arm. We slide it about halfway in and then push up the pop pin and slide it the rest of the way until you hear a click. Loading the torque arm is fairly self-explanatory, but number 3 will make it hardest at the beginning of the rep. Number 1 is going to make it hardest at the middle of the rep. And number 2 is going to make it hardest at the end of the rep. And if you would like to use your weight stack, you can attach that directly to the torque arm, which is a really great feature to be able to use the selectorized stack on each movement. Here you're going to see me setting up for the first exercise that we're going to show and go over, which is the leg extension. So we'll pop off the headrest there on the Shorty Bench, and we'll go ahead and adjust all of the settings down to where the owner's manual tells us to. Again, the owner's manual is very handy with this rack attachment. This is the leg extension seat that just pops right on the Shorty Bench, and then this is the seat back or back pad for the leg extension, which then as well pops right in, utilizing the holes on the side rails of this Shorty Bench. Pull the pop pin and things click right in, nice and secure. Each attachment has a pull pin that secures it. I'm not really sure exactly what that's called, but the pin secures it. Here I'm showing that you can easily fit a 25 and a 45 on each weight peg side to side, but if you try to put on 2 45s, you're going to have a hard time stacking those up quite as nicely as a 25 and a 45, but still doable depending on how you would like to load. The leg extension feels very natural. It's very, very similar to their plate-loaded piece. I honestly did not and could not tell much of a difference Again, if you are a user of their plate loaded line more regularly, then you may notice a slight difference, maybe, but I would say 99% of users are not going to tell the difference. It is that close to being the same, especially if you're lined up with the axis rotation. Next, you're going to see me transform things over to the lying leg curl, which is extremely easy. We'll adjust the ankle pad here and then put on the leg curl pad in replacement of where the leg extension pad was. And then we will also change the angle, again stated in the owner's manual. The great thing about the switch between the leg extension and the lying leg curl, honestly, is that you don't have to move the bench at all. You just have to make a couple adjustments, which take no more than 30 seconds, and you're off to the races with the lying leg curl. A little bit more of a transformation here for the preacher curl setup. You're going to notice that we have to transform things a little bit more, switching out the attachments we're using on the shorty bench, popping on the arm pads here. And the one adjustment here that is a little different than the other movements is that the preacher curl is the only movement that you're not going to actually be right up against the bench locator. You're going to be roughly 14 inches in front of that, which you're going to notice that you'll be right in front. If you have the HLP Prodigy rack and you have the front foot pegs there, or front footers, you're going to be just in front of those, but just 14 inches off that bench locator. It does take a few tries here to really line things up the best you can. But again, a very easy transformation for the ability to have a gym grade plate loaded preacher curl in your home gym or small studio space, which honestly is just so incredibly cool and so useful in so many cases, whether you're just training yourself or you're training clients or a group of clients in your studio space. The preacher curl comes mainly with this handle here, which does feel very nice and is very similar to their plate loaded preacher curl. But there's also another option that you can get as well, which I'll show you in a second. But you're going to see me adjusting a little bit here. As I mentioned, there is some adjustment that does need to be made with this preacher curl just to get things lined up as well as you can. But essentially, you're just trying to line up where the handles are in relation to those arm pads and being sure that you're in a comfortable range of motion with your elbow aligned to that axis of rotation, again signified by the green dot. Here you're going to notice the switch out of the upgraded handle option, which you can utilize just normal D handles if you have those, or Prime's cast handles, which are a little bit more ergonomically designed and do feel quite good. Emulates sort of a fat grip in terms of the width of those handles, but they are more cone shaped, which fit into your hand a little bit more securely than a traditional fat grip does. And to set up for the tricep extension, all we have to do is turn this bench around, line it up with the bench locator, and switch out the handle, and you're ready to go. This one is pretty dang easy to set up. The tricep extension is one of those where I wasn't quite sure how much I was going to like it, but turns out I loved it. And although it is missing a back pad like their traditional selectorized machine has to help secure your torso throughout this movement, I didn't mind as much as I thought I would. And I was able to really perform fairly loaded quarter reps, partial reps, really emphasizing the stretch there, which if you're training for muscle growth is a great way to perform that exercise, especially when pairing it with another movement that helps get a little bit more full range of motion. All right, so on to the last two movements, which are the weighted ab crunch and back extension. So I wasn't quite sure about these two movements. Again, I love that they're options. I love that they added these on as options, as it is incredibly useful in the home gym or small studio space. But as you're going to notice, there's some reassembly required to best line up the axis of rotation with where my hips are in relation to the bench, or where my hips are in relation to when I sit down and that axis of rotation. So I take the smart arm base from hole 14 down to hole 12, I believe. And that is just enough to better align my hips with that axis of rotation. So again, in terms of resetting things up, in terms of rack attachments, this is a very low cost in terms of time that you're going to spend readjusting this. And I do advise that you adjust it based off of where it best lines up with your hip joint, because that's what we're going to ultimately be rotating around during these last two movements, the weighted ab crunch and the back extension. But once you get it readjusted and get things settled, it's a very self-explanatory setup, lining things up in terms of the bench with that bench locator, and then putting on the ankle pad here to help secure my lower body. The ab crunch did come with a challenge of really figuring out, or just some adjustments rather, figuring out exactly where things ultimately should be. So I had to adjust the height of that pad a few times, but I ended up figuring it out fairly quickly. So not too many adjustments there. And anyways, no matter who you are or who your clients are, you're going to have to readjust to their body structure regardless. So, and then lastly, here is the back extension. So we're going to utilize the leg extension seat, which I thought was extremely innovative and useful to give you a place to grab onto throughout this movement to help secure your torso a little bit more. Change up the load to make this a little bit heavier. And again, you can load different parts of the range of motion with this torque arm, which is extremely useful. And then here we'll just be sure our hip is lined up with that axis of rotation, again signified by that green dot, and work through that range of motion. Those are the 6 variations that are possible with this smart arm attachment. Again, an extremely useful piece. And without further ado, let's talk about how you're going to store this thing.
So let's talk wall storage for the smart arm attachment. Everything you see here beside me and behind me all goes to this attachment, whether that be the torque arm here that slides in and out, stores nicely up top so it's easy to get it in and out, as well as the base of the actual smart arm, which is certainly the most heavy, most awkward piece to get in and out, but it is what it is, right? So just understand there is some weight to that, there's some heft to it, which obviously gives you quality and stability, but also comes with an awkward nature to moving it in and out of the space. So take that for what it is. As far as getting this on and off, it is pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's kind of looking at weird J-hooks sometimes and you're not sure how they go on the squat rack, so you kind of flip them around a couple times. Kind of how this goes the first time, but there are instructions in the owner's manual, so I do recommend actually reading that. It is quite helpful. So to get this on and off, there's a handle here on the left side for us, as well as a place to grab here. So we can grab that as well as that handle down there. Okay, so to put that back on, just fit the metal piece in the indentation, pull the pop pin, and securely fasten it back to the wall there, okay? And then the rest of the attachments do just slide in here. So they have a little pin that comes off. These slide out and put them into the connector once you set everything up, based off the variation you want to do. Okay, so these are very easy to get in and out. As far as the other attachments here, I am pretty positive that this is the leg extension seat as well as the seat that you'd use on the back extension. This does come with that, as well as the lying leg curl seat attachment there. I don't have wall storage for those quite yet, but I assume that that's coming. So I'll be able to just put those on the wall, likely up here above where this is right now. Also down here, I forgot to mention, is the bench locator. So this is the first thing that you set up on your rack. So you'll take this off, set that in position, and that's where you know kind of where to essentially put the bench relative to the exercise that you're doing. Also, there is instructions for each variation in the owner's manual. Again, I highly recommend using it. It is extremely helpful, trust me, on setting things up for the first time. So that bench locator just pops right back in here and stores nicely down there. This is the seat back, or the back pad for the leg extension. This just comes up so you can keep everything attached and take it right in, set that up, basically flips right around, goes onto the Shorty Bench right there. Okay, that's why you need the Shorty Bench for this attachment ideally, okay? That stores nicely right there. And then we have the attachment for the preacher curl and tricep extension here. That just comes out right there very easily. That pop pin, and then just slide that back in. It pops back into place. This is a cradle if you want to use that for dumbbells, whether you're using it for preacher curl on dumbbells or using it as a place to maybe set the cast handles if you have the preacher curl add-on attachment for a little bit better grip options, more variability, more degrees of freedom there. So that stores nicely right here. That just comes up and off there. And then we have the actual headrest to the Shorty Bench down here at the bottom, okay? So that is pretty much everything that you'd need. The only other thing is the leg curl or the ankle support leg pad for the ab crunch, which I have just off camera here. That's also on a wall storage. That also holds the arm supports on the Shorty Bench if you're doing like an incline elbow supported curl. Okay, so all that's on one storage as well. So all these wall storage units are on their site. I highly recommend them. They're worth the money. They get everything off the ground onto the wall on a nice secure base. Very, very space efficient. So if you guys have any questions about any of this wall storage, pop it down in the comments below. So let's get to some of your frequently asked questions. So this is going to be a mix of personal anecdote and experience with this attachment and just general training over the years, as well as answers directly from Prime in the call that I had with them last week about the questions you guys were asking. So that's going to be kind of the mix here in terms of my answers and responses. So question number one, do I see myself using this consistently? Honestly, yes, I do, but with a caveat. I think I would use this a lot more if I didn't already have the Prime plate-loaded leg extension leg curl combo unit here in my home gym. Although it is a smaller space, that was sort of a non-negotiable at the beginning when I built the gym. This was before this came out. So, you know, realistically, if it was just me here, I might get rid of that unit. Although I absolutely love it. It's one of the best leg extension leg curl combo units I've ever used, if not the best, hands down in terms of the resistance profile and everything, in terms of both of those movement patterns and just how smooth it is. And it's great. But knowing my wife, knowing her tendencies of training and where she'd prefer to have access to that, I don't see myself getting rid of that combo unit plate loaded machine. And so that kind of takes away the necessity to have the access to the leg curl, leg extension combo here in terms of the first two options within this machine. But the preacher curl option and the tricep extension option, I think I'm going to use a ton. I used it the other day in my arm training and I absolutely loved it. My arms are still sore from that session, and my ability to actually just level up and upgrade what I was doing in terms of exercise selection and loading on my arm training. The back extension and ab crunch, the jury's still out for me on those. I think they're great as options, as additional options on this piece, but I don't know how often I'm going to personally use them, but we'll see. Maybe I will, I don't know. The jury's still out on that. Number two, is it worth the cost? Yes and no. I think, yes, it's worth the cost. One, if you have the budget. Two, if you've really been wanting a leg extension leg curl, and by purchasing this and you have a compatible rack, you have now the ability to also do preacher curl, tricep extension, loaded ab crunch, and back extension if that's what you need. I really don't see the downside there. Knowing the price of the plate loaded combo unit from Prime, I think this is a insane bang for your buck in terms of space saving and in terms of exercise variety. So if you don't have it in your budget, you know, maybe not, but if it is anywhere close to within your budget and you're needing those pieces, you could really value those pieces in a smaller space, whether that's your home gym or studio space, then yes, I do think it's worth the cost. Any noticeable downsides when compared to the standard plate loaded machines? So as I've mentioned, I have the plate loaded leg curl, leg extension combo unit here in my home gym. It's just off camera. And to be honest, I don't notice much of a difference here in terms of the way they feel. I don't think that 90%, I'm being kind of erring on the side of caution there, probably 99% of people wouldn't really notice the difference. Some of the more advanced trainees who've used the plate loaded machines a lot over the years may notice some difference. But again, in terms of general feel, in terms of quality, in terms of the way that the axis of rotation lines up, the way that the bench stopper down here aligns the bench for you. They also have instructions for each movement that comes with the manual. So you get this manual with the, not cooperating. You get this manual with the actual piece. So, and it comes with how to set up each of those 6 variations, as well as, you know, what pieces you need with each and the angle that the bench needs to be. So I truly think this is as close as you could possibly get with being what this is as a rack attachment. The amount of space that it saves, I don't see a difference really with the plate loaded machines, and I don't think most people would even notice the difference if given the option to choose. So number 3, why angled and not straight placement? So this was a question I had to ask Prime. I don't have an engineering mind, but what they said essentially is, I'll just read it verbatim: the bench will not fit in the rack straight without pulling the axis too far away from the upright and making the movements unstable. Okay, so it just came down to an engineering and logistics issue as far as the stability of each movement and where this bench could realistically go. So again, it does come at an angle here. I would say you need at least 4 feet from side to side from the actual bench and the attachment to the wall. And I would say you need, to be cautious, I think you need a full 5 feet from the front here of the foot peg or the bench stop and the wall. Okay, so you know you need at least 5 feet here of distance as clearance, and then you need at least 4 feet from side to side. Okay, I was a little bit worried, and I'm working off just inches here, just the skin of my teeth that it fits. So do measure before you order, and again, be sure that you do have a compatible rack. Which brings me on to the next point, or next question, is this compatible with other 3x3 racks? So as long as it has 1-inch holes with 2-inch centers and it is a 3x3 upright, it will work. Okay, so as long as the holes are 1 inch, as long as you have 2-inch centers in terms of the distance between these holes, and you have the 3x3 vertical tubing or uprights, you should be good. I will say with this Prodigy rack, it is great because if you have this front foot peg, if you don't have this front foot peg here on your Prodigy rack, you can order that off their website. But this bench locator is extremely helpful in terms of where to place the bench in terms of lining up with this axis of rotation. So truthfully, it will work best more seamlessly with an HLP Prodigy rack. You can use it on the single stack, which is the next question. So will it work with the HLP single stack? The answer is yes, it will. Do I need the bench to use this attachment? Again, a question that I asked Prime directly. They said 99% yes. They highly recommend the Shorty Bench from them. That's what this innovation was really designed from in terms of kind of the foundation and the base support here in terms of the functionality of the bench and all the different attachments that attach to that bench that make all this possible. But you can get away with other benches potentially if they have the optionality for those. But you know, to play it safe, if you're gonna spend the money on this attachment, I would say go ahead and get the Shorty Bench. If you have a different Prime bench, Prime does make a conversion unit or conversion kit, which I actually had to do a conversion from one of their other benches, one of their heavier duty benches into the Shorty Bench. So they'll send you, or you can purchase a conversion kit there to transform your bench over to a Shorty Bench. So can it be mounted to the other side? Again, a question I had to ask Prime directly because I wasn't sure. So yes, it can, but you can't use the foot bench locator as a stopping point, which will kind of throw off the alignment if you're not on point there. And it's not ideal, is essentially what they said. So it's not an ideal setup. You really need to be here on, if you're looking at the rack, on the left side of the rack. If you're facing away from the rack, it's on the right side of the rack. This is really what it's designed for. They will be making an extension piece. If you have the space for an extension piece, they will be making an extension piece to go on the other side of the rack or to come off the rack a little bit, so you can still do like barbell squats and use the power rack as a fully functional rack if you have the space for that stuff. So they will be making those extension pieces. So stay tuned as far as their website goes and the content they're putting out. I'm sure they'll announce that when it's available. So last one, how does it store? So we did go over this. So it stores on their wall mount. And honestly, I was unsure when I first saw this entire setup and attachment at their showroom. When it was kind of set up already, I was unsure how I was going to store any of that stuff in this small space or in my garage. And I was pleasantly surprised once I was able to get that wall storage hung up on the wall, how well everything just fit into that wall storage and how space efficient it actually is for how much stuff that you get. So all of this, for example, goes on one wall storage, as well as all the attachment pieces that come here. And then, the seat and some of the add-on attachments here do go on other wall storage that you can also purchase. So I would recommend those as far as space efficiency and overall storage. So those are all the questions that I got from you guys. So if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and pop them below in the comments. Myself and Prime will both be in there answering questions from this video. So go ahead and ask those below. And without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I highly recommend this piece of equipment. It's one of the coolest innovations I've seen in some time. It's one of the first, if not the first of its kind, in terms of adding on the variable resistance and the torque arm, in terms of rack attachments, and the absolute versatility that comes with this. So a one-of-a-kind piece, extremely space efficient, and would add a ton of versatility to your training in a home gym or a small studio space. So let me know if you have any more questions. Until next time.